Hello, I'm Paul from Paul Ranson Art. Welcome back to the studio. Today, of course, we're looking at seascapes, and in particular this Bob Ross classic painting, By the Sea. Learning to paint a seascape can be rather challenging. Getting the rise and fall to look right, getting the perspective looking right. There are lots of little elements, and I've used some simple shapes in my painting that'll stand you in good stead when you do your own paintings of seascapes. So, sit back and enjoy my tutorial, maybe with a cup of tea or a cold drink. Anyway, happy painting, people. So here's my canvas for today's painting. Plain at the top, and the lower half painted with black gesso, a little lower than halfway, and I've used a little strip of masking tape to protect the horizon line. For my painting, I'm going to be using this Bob Ross Liquid Clear on the black, and for the top section, Bob Ross Liquid White oil paint. I'm using two Bob Ross landscape brushes, an old one for the black gesso area and a nice new one for the sky. I'm also using a liner brush, a filbert and a fan brush, and of course a Bob Ross palette knife. I start my painting by applying a thin even coat of the Bob Ross Liquid White oil paint to the top section of my painting. Make sure you don't apply too much. To test your canvas, use your fingers. Touch the canvas, a different finger for a different area, and then have a look. You should see nice clear fingerprints. I made a video all about this. Here's a link to it. My colours for today I'll list below, but I'm going to start off with that same brush and some nice Indian yellow. A nice band about 4 inches from the base of the canvas. I didn't clean my brush, but I went straight into some yellow ochre and then into some crimson. Notice I'm using X's and crisscrosses to blend my sky. I then add a little hint of bright red. I made some lavender using some phthalo blue and Alizarin Crimson. This is for the very top of my canvas. I start in the corners to test the colour. When I'm happy, I'll blend it down into the crimson. Finish off your sky by dry cleaning your brush and then using long flat strokes. Bring it all together. No hard edges anywhere. For a sun, I'm going to use my finger dipped in some titanium white paint. Make a little circle on the canvas. Not quite centre, a little to the right, and right in the middle of that patch of Indian yellow. Just make a small circle to start with. Then go back over it to soften the edges. Now time for some clouds. Use the fan brush and a very small amount of the lavender. My top tip is start at the top of the sky. You'll see why in a moment. To form and shape my clouds, I use little C strokes. C for clouds, little circles. Form and shape the top of the cloud and try not to make it look too regular. You'll see in a minute again why I suggest starting at the top of the canvas and the shape of the clouds being quite important. This little group of clouds suffer from a little bit of a problem. They think they're the Loch Ness Monster. Nice regular humps all the way across my canvas. No, I think I need to change them. So I'll add some more cloud on top. The problem is they can get away from you and they become a bit too bold and dominant, and I want my clouds to be quite soft. So I want to get rid of this one. I take my nice 1-inch brush and I simply blend it into the background sky. Now you can see why I suggested doing your first clouds at the top of the canvas. They're easy to lose. For these clouds, I've added a little extra Alizarin Crimson. It reduces the chance of painting a green cloud. This can happen when some of the phthalo blue in the original lavender colour mixes with the yellow in our sky. If you see a hint of green, stop, dry clean your brush and paint a cloud somewhere else. If you want to know more about the paints and brushes I'm using, I've put links to them all in the comments down below. The final step for my clouds is to take that nice 1-inch brush. I've given it a good dry clean, and now I just want to gently soften some of these clouds and remove any brush marks. I'm going to add some distant headlands to my seascape, just a little further over than centre, and again use some of this lavender. The corner of the fan brush is just about perfect for this job. I'm using very little paint at this stage. I want them to look nice and distant, so I'm actually allowing some of that crimsony cloud colour to mix with the headlands. Things furthest away in our painting tend to be faint and don't have very much detail. Time to prepare for the big wave, but hang on, haven't we forgotten something? Yes, the tape. Good job one of us remembered. I'm using an old 1-inch brush and a very small amount of liquid clear oil paint scrubbed in well. I want a thin coat, just enough. I made a video all about this, and here's a link to it. I dry clean my brush, and now I'm going to add some phthalo green. It's a transparent colour, so you can't see it against black, but I want a nice band of this about 4 inches down from the horizon. See how I test my colour? This one's right, that one too oily. I don't bother cleaning my brush, I go straight into some phthalo blue. This goes under the green and a little over the green. Lastly, some of the lavender, and this is for the very top edge of my canvas up by the horizon line. Again, it's transparent. My last colour is Dyke Brown. This is a very dark colour, and I put it on for the area that'll be the beach. I'm going to use my filbert brush with a very small amount of titanium white on it. I want to sketch my wave. I'm going to start about 1 inch below the horizon, and I want to create a sort of arch. This is where the water will be crashing over onto the beach. It's the highest point of my wave. To the right is where the water's rising, and to the left is where the water is cascading over in a bit of a dip. Here the water is rising, here the water is falling, and in the centre is the eye of the wave. I'm using my fan brush with a small amount of white and Indian yellow, and I'm going to use some little dipping strokes here, just little shallow strokes to indicate some background waves. Save a little shadow here and there, don't fill it up completely. Later on I'll come back and add a little sparkle. These are waves that are far away on the horizon. Brighter in the centre, in line with the sun, darker at the edges. As you can see, it's a simple stroke, but so effective. Here, the crests of some waves, a little extra sparkle. Now for the eye of the wave. Some titanium white and some cad yellow. I want a primrose yellow colour on my filbert brush. The eye of my wave is transparent at the top, so where the water's thinnest, Bob would say, smoosh on some colour. I'll use what's left on my brush just to shape up my wave a little bit. Some nice curving strokes up to the crest of the wave. I'm going to use a nice 1-inch brush, and I'm going to use just some small circular strokes to blend the eye of the wave. Don't overdo it. Keep that luminous look. Circular, clockwise or anti-clockwise, it doesn't matter. Just blend it out nicely. Now for the crashing part of my wave. I reload my fan brush with some more of that white and yellow, and I want to travel along the top edge of this wave. Firm pressure, push, slide, and just let that brush fall away. Overlap a little bit and add some more of these strokes. This is the shape of the water as it crashes over onto the beach. I want the brightest part to be at the very top edge and for it to be dipping down into darkness. That's where I'm going to be putting some foam. I might add a few little touches of splash and crash to the right of the eye of the wave as well, just for fun. For the foam on my wave, I reload my fan brush with some slightly brighter white of paint, and I'm going to make little tiny circles as though I was painting a long thin cloud. Just use the corner of the fan brush and make circles, and occasionally give it a little push. Squeeze out some paint to create some little bubbles of light at the top edge of the wave. Try and save a little of that dark inner edge to the wave, sort of like a little mascara line. I'll carry on adding foam around onto the area where it would crash onto a beach. Now blend the foam where it might hit the beach. I'll use the filbert brush to go over the top of the wave and over the top of the eye. If you want to add some more splash and crash, go back in with the fan brush. But if it gets too much, you can always pick up the old 1-inch brush and just rub it out. I'm going to set the floor of my wave at a slight angle. I'm going to use a little bit of titanium white paint just to show you where the floor of the wave would be. This is where the wave hits a beach. Use my palette knife, I pick up a little dirty white paint with a hint of blue in it, and with firm pressure really push on that painting and just allow the knife to slide along. We want to squeeze paint from the toe of the knife and let the paint break at the heel of the knife. Then use a fan brush to grab that back edge of the wave and pull back, and as you go back, think about the wave lifting up into the foam at the top, so it's a sort of curving stroke. Straight back to start with, because it's flat on a beach, and then slowly up. But don't go up too soon. Always pull back a little first. Now remember, this part of the wave is in shadow, so not too bright yet. Let's add a little bit more foam. I want to add some more headland to my painting, so I'm going to use my filbert brush. It's got a bit of grubby white on it and a small amount of Dyke Brown. Shape these up so that they overlap the distant headlands and let them go down just below the horizon line, so they look like they're sitting a little closer to us in the painting. The last one is the darkest one, and I'll add a little bit of highlight. I'll use some Dyke Brown, some white, and a little bit of dark sienna. I'm going to add a nice rock onto my beach, and for this I'm going to use my palette knife and some Dyke Brown. This wants to be quite textured, so I'm going to take quite a good amount and just work it in over the background headlands and just tuck it in next to that little bit of splash and crash. I want this to be detailed. It's much closer to me. For my highlights, again, some white, some dark sienna, maybe even a little hint of red. I'll add a few splashes and crashes with the corner of the fan brush again. If you enjoy my tutorials and you want to support the channel a little more, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link down below, and I spend all the money on new materials. Thank you. I'm going to use my palette knife to drop in a few little rocks on the beach. Same technique as before with the big one. Dyke Brown, a little touch of highlight. I'll use my palette knife, put a little bit of a ripple here and there to settle them onto the beach. Now, a little bit of a sheen on my beach. I've loaded my 1-inch brush with a bit of a mixture of colours here. Got some white, a little bit of the Indian yellow, even a touch of sienna mixed into it. I just want to pull it down and then brush across gently. I'll add a little bit of extra bright colour to indicate where the sun is shining on the beach. If you want to add some extra detail to your wave, I use some thinned out titanium white paint. It's not clean white, got a bit of Indian yellow in it of course, but I want to create a sort of a lacy effect on the face of the wave. When water is crashing and being pulled back off the beach, it tends to pick up a lot of air bubbles and foamy effects, and that's what I'm putting on to the face of my wave. Not everybody likes this effect, but I quite do. But you add it or leave it off of your own painting. If it gets a little too bright and a bit too bold, I like to use a fan brush just to gently smooth it down. I dry cleaned it and just with a very gentle stroke, smooth it down. This just pushes those foamy bubbles back into the wave a little more. It's a neat trick if you've overdone it with the highlighting. I'm going to add a few grasses to the top of one of my rocks. This rock is the closest one to us, and again I use the corner of my fan brush with a little bit of sap green, cad yellow, even a little bit of the Dyke Brown just to add a shadow here and there, and just dab it on. It doesn't need to be too detailed. Next, a little tree. I'm going to take my liner brush with some thin Dyke Brown and hold the brush well back and just wiggle and jiggle a little branch here and there. The final step is to add a few sparklers. I've got a little bit of pure titanium white on the corner of my fan brush. I just want to touch the top of my foam here and there just to give it a little bit of extra pop. Don't overdo it. And here's the finished version of my Bob Ross painting, By the Sea. I hope I've inspired you to paint one as well. But don't go away, there's another seascape painting coming right along. Happy painting, people.